Shalom, everybody. Welcome to Rob on the Rock. I'm Rob Vanoff, and I want to do a short little teaching here from our weekly Torah portion, which is the beginning of the book of Exodus. It's basically Exodus chapters 1 through 5. And I want to look at a little bit from chapter 2. And I'm going to go over the Hebrew, and we'll talk about maybe some of the insights that we learn from these verses. I'm going to look at first 1 verse 8 as a setup for what we'll look at in chapter 2. So again, this is called Parashat Shemot, names. That's the one of the first words in Hebrew of the book of, we call it book of Exodus. In Hebrew, they call it Shemot, the names, because it says these are the names of the sons of Israel, etc. So what we're going to do here is look at chapter 1, verse 8, and then we're going to transition to a little bit from the end of chapter 2. And it begins here, Exodus 1, verse 8, Vayakum melech chadash al Mitzrayim, asher lo yada et Yosef. So, Vayakum melech chadash al Mitzrayim, asher lo yada et Yosef. That means, and there arose melech, it says melech chadash. Chadash, that's a word meaning new. Curiously, the Septuagint uses heteros, just another. So the Greek reading of chadash here is there arose another king, but really new is the best interpretation here. There arose melech chadash. So for those who've done a little bit of Hebrew, melech is a noun, and then chadash is an adjective that's modifying it, a king, a new one. Al Mitzrayim, over Egypt. Asher lo yada et Yosef. Asher here is our relative pronoun, who. Lo yada, he did not know. So yada would be he knew. Lo yada, he did not know. And the object of knowledge is marked by the et there. Et Yosef. Et Yosef. He did not know Joseph. Well, that's a simple verse, isn't it? But it's pretty profound because we have to remember everything we learned from the book of Genesis about Joseph and the Pharaoh that was in charge at the time, and the wonderful relationship that that Pharaoh had not only with Joseph, but with Jacob. And we saw the salvation of not just Joseph's family in the time of famine, but of all Egypt. So this is significant, and it's saying there, lo yada means did not recognize, was not informed of, did not care about the history. So a new king arose who was not informed by or did not care about the historical situation of the children of Israel coming to Egypt and how Egypt benefited. So it's someone who did they have information and didn't care, or never heard about Joseph? Certainly they'd heard about Joseph, this king, but it didn't matter. So you could say, is that a hardness of heart? Well, we're going to continue now, and just for the sake of this short video, go here into the end of chapter 2. It says, Vayhi vayamim harabim hahem, and it was in those many days. In those many days. So many days are going by. It's just it's kind of a montage of all the things that have come up that we've read about. It says Vayamut melech Mitzrayim. So the king of Egypt died. So this is the one that we just read about in verse 8 of chapter 1. That king of Egypt died. Vaye'anahu v'nei Yisrael min ha'avodah. And the children of Israel, it says that they groaned, they despaired from the avodah, from the labor. Because remember, they're being given hard labor, as we learn earlier in the passage. The word avodah here is the same noun it's from the root ayin bet dalet, as you can probably see. Avodah as an abstract feminine noun meaning labor isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Avodah is just a neutral term in and of itself. So contextually, we identify what we call its valence. Is this, if they're struggling under this avodah, this is a different avodah than is mentioned later with the labor of the Kohanim and the Leviim, the priests, and their labor for God in the tabernacle, for example. That's also called avodah. So the word avodah can have different connotation depending on the situation. So here, obviously, this is a slavery aspect that is anti what God has for Israel. And then it says, Vayiz aku, and they cried out. Vata'al shavatam el ha'elohim min ha'avodah. And their shav'ah, their cry out for help, ascended, literally ascended to God from their labors. So their labors were such an external pressure on them and external influence of giving them just despair. And so they are crying out. And that the idea is that God was not ignorant. God was not blind. God did not turn a deaf ear to, or he was not deaf to their cry, that it actually, he attended to them. And we're going to see this in a couple different ways. The Hebrew gives us the same message in some parallel forms. Verse 24, Vayishma Elohim et na'akatam. And God heard their groaning. Vayiskor Elohim et brito. And God remembered his brit, his covenant, et Avraham, et Yitzchak, ve'et Yaakov, his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. Vayar Elohim et ben Israel, and God saw the children of Israel. Vayeda Elohim, and Elohim knew, and God knew. And I say took notice of them, but it's just, and God knew. I wanted to point this out for one reason, because this is a kind of an opposite tie down than what we saw in 1 verse 8. It says, Lo yada et Yosef, that this king, this Melech Hadash, this new king of Egypt, did not know Joseph. He did not, their cry did not bother them at all, bother him at all. He wanted to oppress them clearly. So he's kind of deaf, you could say, to any of their plight, any of their difficulty. Whereas here at the end of Exodus 2, we learn what Yeshua says, right? He says, your Father knows, he sees all things. It says in the Sermon on the Mount, he sees all things. He knows what you need before you even ask. He knows. So there's no situation where you have a need or a difficulty or a trial or some sort of crisis, some kind of emergency or whatever, some kind of despair, where he's not aware of that. And so that's an act of faith, to trust that the Creator knows. And in that way, he's with you. He's with you in that moment. And what the end of, we see here at the end of Exodus 2, in my view, is an assurance to we, the reader, that in spite of this great difficulty that indeed was real, God is not ignorant of it at all. I don't see these as individual moments, that, okay, God heard, okay, then he remembered. I mean, at least in my English brain, I might think, almost like we might characterize Elohim here, similar to the way Eliyahu or Elijah mocks Baal and the prophets of Baal in 1 Kings. Oh, cry out louder. He can't hear you. Maybe he's asleep. Maybe he's in the bathroom. Maybe he's on a journey, right? That's not the way we're to understand that. Or that's the way we're supposed to understand Elijah's mocking of them. But that's not how we're supposed to understand this here. It's not that God forgot. When it says, Vayisko Elohim et Brito, and he remembered, it means that we take these together, he heard. That means he was none of this is a surprise to God. That's the point. None of this is a surprise to him. He told Avram all the way back. Remember, and we read it in Genesis 15. He told Avram, your children are going to be slaves for a few generations, but I'm going to bring them back. So he understood that we need to understand that God understands that this is real, this is difficult, this is indeed harsh treatment, harsh avodah. And he is aware of it. He has not forgotten. So the Vayisko is telling us that he's well aware and he is faithful to his covenant. He is, do not allow yourself to think that this difficulty and these extremely trying and hard, difficult circumstances are a sign that God has forgotten us. No, it says Vayisko Elohim. It doesn't mean he forgot and all of a sudden he remembered. No, he's well aware of this covenant, and he has an unflinching conviction or commitment, I should say, commitment to be who he is, which is faithful to his covenant promises. So the verbs here, Vayishma, and he heard. Vayisko, and he remembered. Vayar, and he saw. Vayeda, and he knew. God heard, God remembered, God saw, God knew. These are all reinforcing the same core principle, which is the Creator is fully aware of the difficulties. He is with his people. He is on his own, swearing by his own name, he is covenantally bound to be with them in this difficulty, and he has already covenantally bound himself to deliver them out of this bondage and to return them to the land as he had promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And this is now the time where he's going to raise up Moses, and do just that. The fact that he says he Vayiskor Elohim et Brito, he remembered his covenant. He remembered his promise is what it means. And he's going to be faithful. Even though there's no one around now who was there, because we learn all the way back in Exodus 1 that Joseph and all his brothers have died, right? They're all, not only has Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob died, but all the sons of Jacob have died. And many, a long time has gone by. And so there's no human who preserves the memory that who was there when the covenant was made, when the promise was made. So here in the Israelites who are suffering, in the Bnei Israel, the covenant promise is a memory. It's a memory. And there's part of an oath that they had been preserving as well, as we remember from the end of Genesis, that they will, because they still have Joseph's bones, and they're going to bring Joseph's bones. Because if we remember at the very end of Genesis, he says, God will pakad, it says, he will visit you. And the idea is that he is going to act in history in accordance with his covenant promise, that you can take it to the bank. It's absolutely sure that he's going to do that. Joseph dies with that confidence that God is going to act on behalf of his covenant promise, on behalf of his covenant people, to fulfill exactly what he has promised. So, and Vayishma Elohim, God heard. Vayiskor Elohim, God remembered. Vayar Elohim, God saw. Vayeda Elohim, and God knew. None of this was a surprise. The bondage, the harsh Egyptian bondage, is not a surprise to God. He told Avram about it. We read that all the way back in Genesis 15, that this was going to be the case, and it's all for his covenant purposes. All right, I'm going to shift over now. We'll do a short video on another passage from our Torah portion on the Tell Us Torah channel. I hope this is a blessing to you. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And I hope this has been just a fun little deep dive into a few verses here that maybe you haven't spent much time on. All right, we'll talk.